So I was going through a stash of old games the other day and realized, holy shit, there's a lot of crap games. I mean, this one's trash, this one's okay, I guess. God awful. I don't remember this one being here, and wait, you're not supposed to be here. Now, many of you may not be too familiar with the franchise of Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon, unless you're one of the many people that click this video looking for a nostalgia fest of this game I'm going to be talking about, but that's besides the point. I only say this as my memories of Ghost Recon often involved my friends being baffled as they were preoccupied with discussing the latest editions of Call of Duty and Battlefield instead. Yeah, middle school was a great time. Anyways, to give you some background, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon is a title launched by Ubisoft, a company responsible for games like Assassin's Creed, Watch Dogs, Rainbow Six, and of course, Just Dance 1, 2, 3, and 4. While Ubisoft published Ghost Recon, the game was developed by the good folks over at Red Storm Entertainment, which had been co-founded by the late Tom Clancy a few years before Ubisoft's purchase of the company, hence the name. Following military-esque inspired stories of Tom Clancy's work, Ghost Recon had its very first game released in 2001 with Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon. Yeah, very creative. In this first title, you were placed in charge of an elite special operative force codenamed the Ghost, who were tasked with completing special missions. In this case, the Ghosts are sent to Russia in order to quell an ultra-nationalist uprising taking place. Utilizing in-depth squad-based mechanics, realistic shooting, and difficult level designs, this first installment set the stage for Ghost Recon in the gaming industry, as many credit it as a defining game in the tactical shooter genre. Named Best Game of the Year by PC Gamer and IGN respectively, the future mainline releases saw the refinement of many of its mechanics and introduction of now stable features in the over-the-shoulder camera, cover-based shooting, and stealth-driven gameplay.
Careful, they're looking your way.
With 12 games released to generally positive reviews, Ghost Recon has remained mostly true to what it first was almost 20 years ago, as recent installments have seen a gradual shift in direction. Of course, the one that I'm talking about, the game that seemingly no one brings up, is the little online game of Ghost Recon Phantoms. With development starting as early as 2010, the game of Ghost Recon Phantoms, known as Ghost Recon Online during its initial stages, was first realized by the team over at Ubisoft Singapore. They'd been originally tasked with helping in the production of another Ghost Recon title that was set to be launched in 2012, but soon began to develop their own ideas for a multiplayer game that could be made for the free-to-play market. Gradually over time, Ubisoft Singapore slowly moved away from assisting in Future Soldier, thus beginning to put development for Ghost Recon Online into full swing. Starting from scratch, the devs aimed to create a game that remained true to the identity of the Ghost Recon franchise and delivering a true tactical shooter experience, while still innovating in order to bring about its own quirks and charms. The devs knew that they were creating a game under the already established Ghost Recon IP, and welcomed the challenge of upholding its brand. Although development for Ghost Recon Online began in the studios of Singapore, it soon became a continental spanning effort as an additional 8 other studios from around the world soon joined the project. With multiple studios tied to the project, difficulties began to arise as different time zones and language barriers conflicted with each other. One technical game live manager commented that, after sending messages in bottles to Singapore, which turned out not to be too effective, we tried more traditional tools, like Skype. Which the operative director responded with,
messages in bottles. Well, if the Germans sent messages in bottles, the issue is it's written in German.
Despite these apparent issues though, the multicultural team gave way to other advantages as many views and ideas could be pulled from one another. While Online was originally planned to be released for the PC and Wii U, the plug was pulled for the Wii U version sometime during development. In turn, what culminated from this multi-studioed effort was the PC exclusive release of Ghost Recon Online in the form of its closed and later open beta. At its core, Ghost Recon Online's gameplay was greatly influenced by what it spawned from in Future Soldier, as it utilized similar shooting mechanics, intuitive cover system, and overall multiplayer feel.
Killed him. Low health. Ballin'.
From the very beginning, it was made clear by the devs that Ghost Recon Online would emphasize teamwork and tactical gameplay. This rang true as the game revolved around the 3 playable classes of the Assault, Recon, and Specialists who each offered their own specific weapons, abilities, and playstyles. For the Heavy Assault, you were equipped with assault rifles and shotguns and were meant to be at the front of the action pushing the enemy back. To assist you in this task, Assaults were given access to the abilities of Heat and Blitz, with heat allowing you to suppress the enemy through microwave radiation, and blitz providing you a shield and increased speed to rush and knock down enemies for allies to clean up. Recons on the other hand were lightweight and armed with snipers and submachine guns, tasked in providing intelligence and sniper support or infiltration. The abilities of Cloak and Oracle helped in these playstyles, as Cloak allowed a player to remain invisible for a short period of time, while Oracle gathered information, highlighting enemies for teammates to see. Last but not least is the Specialist, who acted as a middle ground support class carrying light machine guns and shotguns. They could either be equipped with the Aegis ability that provided an area of effect shield for teammates, or Blackout, an area of effect EMP that stunned enemy opponents, putting their own abilities on cooldown. Along with these abilities were unique perks given to each class that influenced teammates when they were close to each other. Couple this with the game's objective-based game modes of Conquest, a tug-of-war-based point-by-point control game mode, and Onslaught, an attack and defense game mode, meant that team play and coordination were key in achieving success on the battlefield. Different areas called for different classes and abilities, and rarely could you find yourself in a position where you could simply blast your way through no matter what gun you had. As a person that played this game a decent amount, I can tell you firsthand that this is not the kind of game you can just Rambo your way through. More often than not, you'll find yourself littered with bullet holes if you try. Along with team-focused gameplay, customizable aspects were also featured as armor cosmetics, and a slightly less cool version of Future Soldier's Gunsmith was also available. Both of these features provided tactical implications as they improved durability and overall power. This, along with abilities, were tied to the game's progression, as leveling up unlocked equipment that could be purchased with in-game credits or real-world money. With all these components working together, Ghost Recon Online's open beta was officially launched in 2012 and met with generally positive reviews, scoring 7.5 and 6s from GameSpot and Eurogamer respectively. Most critics commended Online's gameplay, touting its slick controls and cover and movement, dynamic classes, emphasis on team-oriented action, attention to detail, and its balance in microtransactions as a free-to-play game. The only big qualms came in the fact that matchmaking was unpredictable and that its content was a bit sparse. Scrolling through user comments also seemed to imply that most people enjoyed it and believed it was not a pay-to-win kind of game. Of course, when one opinion exists, there's usually another person around the corner screaming the opposite thing, and this is no exception. For the most part though, it seemed Online's release into the mainstream market was well received, and its fanbase was waiting in anticipation for what was to come. What followed was a 2-year span of Online's open beta status, which featured gradual updates and adjustments made to the game. New maps were added, a firing range which allowed the testing of any gun was implemented, clans were introduced, cross-promotional cosmetics were released, and in September of 2013, the first official tournament presented by Ubisoft and ESL kicked off a 7-week cup series which ended in a continental final for NA and EU. During the steady open beta phase, community feedback and improvements continued, and it wasn't until 2014 that Ghost Recon Online made its next big change. On April 10th of 2014, Ghost Recon Online officially dropped its open beta shackles and fully embraced itself as a full-fledged game under the new title of Ghost Recon Phantoms. Now accessible through Steam, producer Corey Facto stated this change was due to the fact that the difference between where the game started and the game today was so considerable that they felt they should market with a fresh identity, and that feedback from their 5 million players throughout beta enabled them to continuously increase the content of the game and to improve what makes the game unique. In order to further solidify itself as a Tom Clancy title, the story background was further fleshed out. Tying into the idea of future world conflicts, Phantoms was now set in the near future, where a group called the Athena Corporation emerged as a leading inventor of weapons and technology and is distributing it to the highest bidder. In this future, the Ghost Squadron are splintered off into 2 factions, the original members fighting to protect the interests of the government, and ex-ghosts, the Phantoms, who are fighting for the interests of the people. The fights that happen online thus emulate the encounters the Ghosts and Phantoms have with their advanced tech. A weekly webcomic was later released in August which detailed the storyline of Phantoms and how the divisions came to be. Along with narrative updates, Phantoms also featured new gameplay and overhauled visuals, as lighting and level designs were altered for most maps. With its rebrand in full swing, it seemed once again that Phantoms was on the positive end of the critics' and player satisfaction spectrum, as reviews and comments were generally in favor of it, praising its controls and gameplay. As before, arguments of its legitimacy as a free-to-play game existed, as both sides had their fair share of stories to tell. Despite this though, Phantoms remained a strong title that stood on its core gameplay mechanics that had been established way back in its early stages of closed and open beta. What followed would be the continuation of a steady stream of released updates and patches as time went on. In 2015, the 1-year anniversary of the rebranding was celebrated as players were rewarded with 3 weeks of festivities and prizes. This included bonus XP and in-game currency, free giveaways, and the release of a team deathmatch game mode.
Warning. Heavy casualties sustained.
Everything seemed to be going well, but as fate would have it, on August 26, 2016, just over 2 years after its rebrand, it was announced that Ghost Recon Phantoms would be discontinued on December the 1st. What was a beacon for the tactical shooter genre in the free-to-play market was now to be shelved. So, what was the problem? Looking at the statements from Ubisoft Singapore, it appears that while they were happy to release a different take on the franchise, Ghost Recon Phantoms was unfortunately not as successful as they'd hoped for, so they had to make the decision to close the game. They go on to state that the decision wasn't easy for them and they tried to find their ways, but in the end they decided to close the game and focus on other projects. If success was purely tied to player base, then it would seem that the slow and gradual decline in player base was a big deciding factor in Ubisoft's decision. At the time it was announced that Phantoms was shut down, the average player base was listed to be just over 800. While there could be a number of reasons for this, many seem to attribute it to the increased monetization of the game that seemed to slowly push it more towards a pay-to-win style. Despite these shortcomings though, the core community of Phantoms as a whole were shocked to hear this news and saddened that their beloved game would be done for good. While looking into what remained in the memory of this game, I found many players that still yearn for this game to come back in some way, shape or form. Whether in forums, comments or tweets, there is a following that wants this game to return. Unfortunately, unlike the other games I talked about, there doesn't seem to be any immediate revival project on the horizon. The closest thing I saw were some posts about possible resurgences that have seemingly lost all steam over time. While Ghost Recon Online and then Phantoms received its fair share of doubts and criticisms that eventually landed in its closure, the initial praise it first gained and the continued enjoyance from many fans, including myself who never spent a dime on it, proves that it was a game that was like no other for its time. The controls were smooth and intuitive, the gameplay delivered on Ghost Recon's staple tactical shooter feel, team-based coordination was at the forefront, and it was visually stunning despite it just being a free-to-play game. In researching for this video, I've come to learn and appreciate what the devs were able to do for this game. The team genuinely felt committed to this game and enjoyed making it what it was. What they produced and how they interacted with the community shows it. While many may have never heard of or forgot this game exists, I'll always remember it for what it was. A fun Ghost Recon title that was free.